wanted to ask you a few questions about why did you decide to write about that subject?
Charles asked one question at Windsor Castle that his own son had never planned to answer out loud. And when William finally said it, the king didn't shout, he didn't argue, he just went quiet, because the answer confirmed something Charles had been dreading since the moment he sat down. This wasn't a meeting about staffing. It was the end of a model the monarchy had trusted for 70 years. It started 3 days earlier, inside Kensington Palace. Catherine was reading a briefing on royal transitions when she reached 1952. King George VI had died. His widow became Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, moved into Clarence House, and remained one of the most visible figures in British royal life for the next 5 decades. Staff, engagements, patronages, a household of her own that outlasted the reign it came from. Catherine read the page twice. Then she asked a question nobody seemed eager to answer. Would Camilla eventually have that same kind of household? The silence lasted just a little too long to be comfortable. Her concern wasn't charity work or family gatherings. It was structural. A household means advisors, communications, invitations, access. Individually harmless. Together, a second center of gravity beside whoever is actually wearing the crown. And the old comparison didn't hold up. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was the new monarch's mother. Camilla would only be William's stepmother. Different relationship, different pressure entirely. So Catherine turned the question on William directly. Were they building their own reign, or just inheriting arrangements meant for somebody else's family? William resisted at first. He already knew what would happen the moment anyone touched Camilla's future in public. Diana's name would resurface within hours. People would call it revenge dressed up as policy. Then Catherine said the sentence that changed the entire direction of the conversation. If the rule looks personal, make it apply to me too. If William died first and George inherited the crown, she wouldn't expect her own son to build a second court around his mother either. No household of her own trailing behind his reign. No inherited authority just because she'd once been queen. She would remain his mother. Nothing more, nothing less. The crown and everything attached to it would belong to George alone. In that single moment, this stopped being about Camilla. It became a rule Catherine was volunteering to live under herself. From there, the language tightened fast. One reign, one household, one sovereign at the center. No mention of Camilla by name anywhere in the document. No mention of Diana. Just a structure built to survive the accusation that it had been written to target one person. Then somebody in the room said the 2 words everyone had been avoiding. Clarence House. Because a residence isn't just a residence. It's where staff gather, where guests are received, where a former queen's identity keeps functioning long after the reign beside her has ended. William didn't answer right away. That hesitation told Catherine everything. A meeting was arranged at Windsor for Thursday the 13th of August at 6:25 in the evening. Charles was told only that it concerned future transition arrangements, language dry enough to suggest nothing more than scheduling. He walked into the private sitting room and found William and Catherine already waiting. Between them sat a single cream folder, 4 words printed across the front, "The next reign household." Charles sat down. William didn't open it. Catherine did. That detail alone changed the temperature of the room, because it told Charles this decision hadn't come from his son alone. Catherine wasn't there for support. She had built this with him. By 6:31, Charles reached the end of the first page and looked up slowly. His first reaction wasn't anger, it was disbelief. "This is about Camilla," he said. William answered carefully. "It affects Camilla." Charles held his stare. "That's the same thing." Catherine spoke before William could respond. "No, it isn't." Charles went back to the page. If he died before Camilla, there would be no automatic second royal court built around his widow, no inherited palace machinery, no guaranteed communications office, no permanent staff simply because they'd served the previous reign. Camilla would keep her lawful status and remain family, but the monarchy itself would belong entirely to the next king and queen. Then Charles stopped on one line and asked the question William had been waiting for since he walked in. What happens to Clarence House? Nobody answered immediately, and that pause carried decades of history inside it. For Charles, Clarence House had always been proof that a widow could remain powerful without threatening the sovereign beside her. William looked directly at his father. "Nothing is automatic," he said. "Not the house, not the office, not the staff, not the institutional role." Each sentence landed on its own. Charles leaned back. The conversation turned painfully personal in a single breath. "And if I'm not here to protect her?" William's expression softened, but his answer didn't. "She won't need protection from us." "Then what do you call this?" "A boundary," William said, after a pause that lasted just long enough to matter. Charles turned toward Catherine, expecting her to stay supportive and silent. Instead, she said 4 words that reshaped everything. "It applies to me too. If William died before her and George became king, she would accept the exact same principle. She wouldn't ask her own son to preserve a separate household around her simply because she had once been queen." Then she delivered the line that stopped the room completely. "My son should never have to inherit my authority as well as his father's crown." Charles looked down at the folder and said nothing. No explosion, no dramatic rejection. He simply sat back because Catherine had just removed his only real defense. He could no longer claim this rule existed only because of Camilla. She had surrendered the same future privilege for herself, in front of him, without being asked to. Finally, Charles requested that Camilla hear all of it directly. By 7:10 that evening, she was in the room. She knew instantly something had shifted. William explained it plainly. When the next reign began, there would be one sovereign and one working household, and no second court would continue automatically beside the new king. Camilla understood the implication before he finished. "Meaning yours?" William corrected her quietly. "Meaning the king's." "And me?" she asked. Catherine answered first. "You remain family, but not royal," Camilla said. "That is not what was said," Catherine replied. William stepped between them before it could harden further. Camilla's lawful status wouldn't disappear. She could attend family occasions and appear publicly whenever the sovereign chose to invite her. Respect wouldn't end with Charles's reign, but the automatic machinery behind it would. Staff would answer to whoever was reigning. Communications would run through the new court. Residences would be reviewed instead of simply assumed. Camilla turned to Charles. "So the moment you're gone, I disappear?" William answered before his father could. "No. Disappearing and losing automatic institutional power were not the same thing." Then he gave her the sentence that reframed the entire conversation. "Family is not the same as government." Camilla looked at Catherine, searching for satisfaction and finding none. Catherine had already placed herself beneath the same rule, and that changed something in the room. Camilla stopped asking what she would lose and started asking what the rule actually was. Would it apply only to widows of kings or every future consort? Could a later sovereign simply undo it? William turned the first page over, revealing a second sheet Camilla hadn't known existed. At the top, a heading, "The One Court Principle." This was never a private arrangement built for one difficult transition. It was a succession rule. It would apply to every surviving consort who came after the reigning monarch. Catherine's name was listed. So was George's future spouse. Even Charlotte's future position, should the crown ever land on her. When one reign ended, its household ended with it. A future sovereign could invite a former consort to continue certain duties, but nothing would carry over automatically. Authority would have to be renewed, every single time. Camilla could no longer claim she was being isolated. The structure had been built to outlast everyone currently sitting in that room, including the 2 people who wrote it. Days before this meeting, William had quietly taken the principle to Princess Anne, who had lived through one reign ending and another beginning firsthand. He asked whether abandoning the Queen Mother model would weaken continuity. Her answer was short: different reign, different family. He pushed further, asking if she personally agreed with the principle itself. Anne kept her answer about structure, not Camilla. The next king has to be allowed to actually be king, she said, nothing more. That gave William proof the idea could survive outside the emotions surrounding one woman. Back in the room, William explained that the principle wasn't designed to erase history, only to stop history from becoming an automatic command nobody had actually chosen. Camilla asked one final question. Could a future king simply reverse it? William's answer was careful. A sovereign could always shape his own household. That was the entire point. Camilla could remain important because a future king chose to include her, not because precedent forced his hand. Charles closed the second page and sat in silence for several seconds. Nobody spoke. The meeting began breaking apart. Camilla rose first, then Catherine. But just as Catherine reached the door, Charles asked William to stay behind. The door closed, and for the first time all evening, father and son were completely alone. Charles's next question had nothing to do with Camilla. Have you truly thought about what this rule could one day mean for Catherine? William answered without hesitation. Every day. Charles pushed harder, describing a reign ending too early, George inheriting before anyone wanted, Catherine still alive and loved, but no longer at the center of the institution she'd helped build. Could William really accept that? William looked toward the door his wife had just walked through. Then he gave his father the answer Charles never expected to hear. No, but she is. That was the part Charles couldn't argue his way around. Catherine hadn't supported this rule because it cost her nothing. She supported it because she believed the next sovereign had to inherit freedom along with the crown, even if it meant she herself would never become a permanent second center of royal authority just because the public loved her. The argument had started with Camilla, it ended with Catherine. That was exactly why it held. The next morning, William and Catherine reviewed the final wording one last time. No reference to Diana anywhere in it. No criticism of Charles. No line aimed directly at Camilla. Just one principle, stripped down to its core. The next reign will begin with one sovereign, one court, one working household. William signed first. Catherine read the sentence once more, then added her name beside his. No celebration followed, because both of them understood the document described a loss they might personally live through themselves one day. For decades, the monarchy had leaned on the memory of the Queen Mother as proof a widowed queen could remain one of the most visible figures in royal life long after her husband's reign ended. William and Catherine chose something different. Camilla could remain Charles's widow. She could remain family. But she would never automatically carry the institutional weight of Charles's reign into William's. Catherine had written herself into that exact same future. If William died first, her popularity wouldn't exempt her. History wouldn't exempt her. The rule would still stand, unchanged, for her too. Charles had walked into Windsor, believing this was a conversation about staffing. He walked out having seen the entire shape of the monarchy after his own reign ended. That was why the silence mattered, not because he'd lost an argument in one room, but because for a few unbearable minutes he'd been forced to picture a future where his own authority no longer existed at all. And one detail still sits underneath this entire decision, completely unresolved. Clarence House, the very residence Charles asked about first, the one question William never fully answered before the meeting ended. If there is truly only one court, who actually controls Clarence House when the next reign begins? That single unanswered question could decide whether this principle remains nothing but words on paper or becomes the most visible break from the Queen Mother era the British monarchy has ever seen.